and welcome to my YouTube video. Today I'm going to be painting this lovely little, I think it's a corgi type dog. I'm not quite sure exactly what breed it is, but I'm going to talk to you about the 4 things that I think are essential to making a good painting. So the first thing is I think it's essential to have good draftsmanship in a painting. So the drawing needs to be good. So if you think about when you look at a painting, if the drawing is off, it doesn't really matter how well you paint it, it'll just look wrong. If you think about those paintings where, you know, the eye is slightly too high or the nose is off, or, you know, you can usually spot it. It's much easier to see when anatomical things are off. I guess it's because we see those every day, so we're very familiar with it, so I guess it's easier to spot something when it's not right. But if you're painting something like a flower or something like that, it doesn't matter so much if it's not as correct as if you're painting something which has anatomy in it. So a good trick that you can do to try and get your drawing more accurate, apart from obviously practice your drawing, is if you obviously you can trace an object, or you can use technology to kind of project the image onto the canvas, or you can grid up your canvas in squares and then grid up what you're looking at as well, to then help you transfer your image onto the canvas. So the second thing that I think is important to a good painting are the tonal values. So these need to be correct. If you think of the tonal range from say 1 to 9, and 1 is white and 9 is black, everything lies somewhere on that range. So the eye does struggle to see colour and black and white at the same time. Sometimes you can look at things and you can think that it's much lighter than the thing next to it, or much darker than the thing next to it, and you can be quite surprised if you turn it into black and white that the tonal values are actually very similar. It's just that the colour has thrown you off. So this is why I choose to work with 2 images. I have one in black and white and I have one in colour, so that I can always refer to what the correct tonal values are, and I can always be glancing at the colour as well that I'm looking at. So a good trick here is you can either do a full underpainting, where you might choose a colour like raw umber and white to separate out your tonal values and get those correct to start with. I don't tend to do that because it's a bit too time consuming. Or what you can do as you're going along is you can photograph your painting, and then you can turn it into black and white on your phone, and then you can compare it to the black and white image that you have of your painting. I do this a lot, and it's quite surprising how out I am when I'm looking at a picture and I think, oh my goodness, that just does not look right. I pretty much know that I've got the tonal values wrong. So a quick photograph, and also as well viewing it on a smaller screen, it really does help you see what's wrong with it as well. So I would definitely recommend doing that if you're able to. So the third thing that I think is really important is knowing what temperature it is of the picture that you're looking at. So for example, we've dealt with tonal values. Now you need to look at the colour. Are you looking at something that is warm or something that is cool? And getting the temperature right is really very important to creating that sense of form. So it's very important that when you look at the picture, you get a sense of understanding, well, what is that item? What is the colour of it in relation to the colour of it next to it? So this is why I always try and work on my painting and bring each layer up to completion as I'm going along, because it makes it a lot easier to judge what colours and temperatures that you're looking at when you've got the thing next to it, because everything is in relation to everything around it. So a good trick that I find is to always start with your most obvious items, because you can gauge the temperature more easily. So for example, you could start with the eyes and the nose and the mouth. And then what you do is you try and bridge the areas in between to these main items. And it makes it a lot easier than trying to start with areas that you're not really sure about. So the last thing that I think is really important is colour mixing. So this is actually quite hard, as the more colours that you introduce into your palette, the harder it's going to get and the more difficult it's going to be to balance the picture and make everything integrate into its background. You might find that you start getting areas that look a little bit disjointed. So it's worth remembering that everything will always take on the colours around it. So whatever object you have will be influenced by the background that it's in. So a great trick for making sure that you try to get a harmonious painting is to try and limit your palette to maybe just a few colours. So for example, you could try just using black, white, raw umber, and then maybe 3 primaries, but choose primaries that are relevant to your picture. So for example, you might choose a cadmium yellow or maybe an Indian yellow, depending upon the yellowness of the picture that you're painting. So I hope you have enjoyed my YouTube video today. I do try and post once a week, so I'll hopefully see you for the next one.